Ever sat in a theater, like totally floored by how a set just like moves magically on its own?
Yeah.
Well, today we're going backstage, behind the scenes.
Hmm.
We're diving deep into what it takes to be an automated flybar operator.
Those are the wizards, really, behind those how they do that moments.
Exactly. And you found us some killer sources on RoleCatcher, so let's break it down. What does an automated flybar operator, like, actually do? Paint us a picture.
Okay, so picture this. Lights go down, music swells, and bam, a 2-ton set piece descends from the ceiling. Perfect timing.
Okay, getting chills.
That's our operator right there, controlling everything that moves. Backdrops, lights, you name it, all choreographed to the performance.
So they're like the conductor of this massive moving orchestra, but with sets instead of instruments.
100%. But way more complex than just like pushing a button. We're talking specialized software rigging systems. It's all pulleys and counterweights hidden above the stage.
Right, right. And those cues has to be timed perfectly. High-stakes stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where the whole automated thing gets interesting. Because, yeah, automation makes these crazy complex moves possible.
Sure.
But it also means the operator needs to be even more skilled.
Hold on. So it's like the more advanced the tech gets, the harder the job is.
Kinda, yeah. The sources even mention that automation could lead to job losses eventually, like as the systems get even more sophisticated.
Wow. So not only do you need serious skills to break into this field, but you also have to stay ahead of the tech curve. That is intense. But how does someone become an automated flybar operator in the first place? Was there like a Flying Things 101 class I missed back in college?
You'd be surprised, but there's not really a specific degree for it. The sources emphasize hands-on training, apprenticeships. You kind of work your way up.
So more of a practical experience, learning the ropes, literally.
Exactly. Although a strong technical background, huge help. Speaking of which, one of the sources had this fascinating breakdown of the skills and career progression. It said there are like 4 main stages. You start at the entry level where you're basically an apprentice. You're assisting the more experienced operators, learning how everything works.
Getting your hands dirty. Or, well, I guess greased is more accurate with all those rigging systems, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So from there, you'd usually become like a junior operator. That's where you get more responsibility. You start programming some basic cues, maybe even operating some of the systems on your own.
Wow, so like actually calling the shots up there. I bet that's a lot of pressure, those first times flying solo.
Oh, for sure. And that's why the sources all talked about critical thinking, problem solving. That's super key for this career path, not just the technical stuff.
Right, because you're basically a flying engineer at that point, responsible for all that heavy equipment moving safely above everyone.
100%. And remember we talked about the math involved? Like, imagine having to calculate the weight distribution of a set piece that's hanging over the audience.
Yeah.
You got to factor in the speed, the angles, even how much it could swing.
Whoa, yeah, it's like high-stakes physics up there.
Totally. And speaking of skills, there was another one that RoleCatcher specifically mentioned, spatial reasoning.
Oh, interesting. So like being able to think in 3D.
Exactly. You're working in 3 dimensions, picturing how all these different set pieces will move and interact in that space. And it can get really dynamic up there, especially during a show.
It's like playing a super high-stakes game of Tetris, but with sets and lights instead of blocks. And all this is going on completely hidden from the audience, right? They have no idea.
Nope. They just see the magic. They don't see the intricate dance happening above them, all thanks to the automated flybar operator.
Speaking of the unseen world up there, I'm curious about the technology itself. Can we dive into those automated systems a little bit?
Sure. So one system that's becoming super common is the variable speed drive, VSD for short. It basically gives operators super precise control over the speed and acceleration of the stuff that's moving.
So instead of just up and down, you can create these really smooth, subtle movements.
Yeah. And those little nuances, they can totally change the mood of a scene. Like, imagine a chandelier slow descending during a really tense moment in a play. It just adds this whole other layer of emotion. That's the VSD at work.
Wow, it's like the equipment itself becomes part of the performance.
Right. And as those systems get even more advanced, that's only going to get more and more important.
It makes you wonder, though, with all this talk of automation, what happens to the human operators in the future? Are they going to be replaced by robots or something?
That's the big question, right? And the sources definitely talked about that. Automation might be able to handle some of the more routine stuff, but you'll always need that human eye, that ability to problem solve and think on your feet.
Because even with the best technology in the world, there are always going to be those show must go on moments where you need a human touch.
100%. And that's kind of the beauty of this career. It's that mix of technical skill and, honestly, artistry. Being able to handle those crazy challenges and still create those moments of magic for the audience.
It's like they say the best tech doesn't replace humans. It just gives them superpowers. So for someone who's listening who's like, this sounds kind of awesome, what does the career ladder look like? How do you actually move up in this field?
So you've put in the time, you're a solid junior
You
operator.
climbed a few ropes, literally.
Exactly. Then you might get bumped up to intermediate. That's where you really start leading,
Yeah.
mentoring the newer folks, maybe taking charge of setting up the systems for a show. You're also the one they call when things get really tricky, technically speaking.
So less about your own hands on the controls, more about making sure the whole system hums along, like a well-oiled, or should we say, well-rigged machine.
Yeah, there you go. And you're working closely with everybody else backstage, too. Like lighting, sound, stage management, everybody's got to be in sync.
It's like that backstage symphony we were talking about before.
Totally. And then the top of the mountain, senior operator, big picture stuff. You might be in charge of like multiple productions at once, working with the designers on crazy ambitious shows, pushing the limits of what's possible with automation.
So not just an operator at that point, but almost.
Yeah.
An artist yourself. Bet the problem solving gets pretty wild, too.
Oh, yeah. One of the RoleCatcher articles had this story. It really stuck with me. Senior operator, right? Middle of a show, a piece of the set gets jammed. Just stuck.
Oh, no. Every operator's nightmare.
Right. But this guy, he kept his cool, used his knowledge of the rigging, some quick thinking, managed to release it manually, all while the show's still going on. Audience never even knew.
Talk about grace under pressure. I'm sensing a theme here. Nerves of steel are a job requirement in this line of work.
Yeah, for sure. But that's part of the fun. That adrenaline when you nail a complex cue or fix something on the fly like that. Man, there's nothing like it.
The ultimate we save the show feeling. Except, times 1,000, because we're talking tons of heavy equipment flying around.
Exactly. And don't forget the creative side. You're not just pushing buttons. You're part of making something beautiful, something that moves people.
Helping to tell stories, create emotions. Those moments that stay with the audience long after the curtain closes.
That's it. It's a challenging career, no doubt, but man, is it ever rewarding.
So for anyone listening who might be thinking, hey, this is up my alley, what are the big takeaways? What should they be thinking about?
I'd say if you love live performance, if you get excited by tech indie art all rolled into one, if you're a problem solver who likes things fast-paced, then honestly, this field could be your calling.
A chance to let your skills really soar. I love it. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. And for everyone listening, until next time, remember, there's magic happening behind every curtain.